Hello guys and gals, and this is another reading, our third reading from Whodunit You Decide, Many Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad, and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. In our last episode, it took place in a haunted house, and somebody ended up dead. And that was really a fascinating story. Next one we're going to read is A Witless Eyewitness by Alice. Oh, wait. Okay. Let me quickly. It's the copyright information, of course, and it says all rights reserved, and it doesn't say anything about this not being able to do this. So, yeah, if there is a copyright thing, then let me know, and I will take the video down. So here we are with A Witless Eyewitness. Alice Gabriel was a lonely woman who liked to use her binocular to observe the world from her living room window. Then one afternoon, while scanning the building across the street, Alice got more than she bargained for. Her statement was read in court. Alice Gabriel. Several weeks ago, two unsavory-looking men moved into the dilapidated house directly across from my place. A tall, thin man and a short, fat one, like the Mutt and Jeff characters you read about in crime books. Sometimes a third man would come over. He looked different, nice and mild-mannered. All three often talked or played cards. Sometimes a nice-looking man took notes in a little notepad. Well, on this particular Sunday, the nice man came to visit again. Only the short fellow was at home, and he seemed very drunk. They talked for a while, then got into some sort of argument. All of a sudden, the short man pulled out a tiny silver gun and started waving it around. The nice man managed to grab it from him. Then they moved out of my line of sight, and I had to change windows. I heard the shot. It wasn't very loud. At the next window, I refocused my binoculars. The short man was grabbing his chest and falling. Blood all over his shirt. The nice man was holding the gun. He looked stunned. This was about 5:25 p.m. A few seconds afterwards, the tall guy came home. He and the killer tried to revive the short guy, but you could tell he was dead. Then the two guys closed the blinds so I couldn't see anymore. I ran right into my bedroom and called the police. Believe it or not, I was put on hold for 10 full minutes before someone took down my information and another 7 before a patrol car arrived. According to the police, the body of Little Sonny Walker was discovered a half hour later. Not in the house itself, but 2 blocks away in the alley behind a neighborhood bar. Based on Alice Gabriel's testimony, the mild-mannered man, Wade Poe, was arrested. A nitric acid test showed that he had recently fired a gun. The tall man of the trio, Bubsy Burkhoff, was arrested as an accessory after the fact for trying to help Poe cover up the crime and dispose of the body. The district attorney expected the defense to enter a plea of self-defense or accidental homicide, but the defendant surprised everyone by claiming total innocence. As the defense begins its opening arguments, you immediately see a line of attack: the credibility of the case's eyewitness. Defense. Alice Gabriel is a woman desperate for attention and obsessed with a vivid imagination. Just look at the holes in her story. She says the victim was wearing a white t-shirt, yet his body was found in a brown dress shirt. She said he was killed by a small silver pistol, yet forensic evidence will show the murder weapon to be a .45 caliber weapon, a much larger gun which was never found. Even her statement on the time of death is wrong. Alice Gabriel says the shot occurred at 5:25, yet we will produce 2 other witnesses who said the time of the shot at 5:40. Most important of all, Miss Gabriel says Sol Walker was shot in his house, yet the police's own evidence proved that his murder took place in the alley behind McGregor's bar. Ladies and gentlemen, after hearing all the evidence, you will have no choice but to disregard Miss Gabriel's testimony and find my client not guilty. Now let's see what it says here. This crime can be solved with 2 clues. Defense witness McGregor's bartender. Okay. Bartender. At about 5:35 p.m., Bubsy Burkhoff walked in and ordered a double of my best scotch. Did he seem upset, like his friend had just been shot? No, he was in a great mood, happier than I seen him in a while. He and Sol live nearby. So, they'd been depressed lately on account of their shaky finances. And when did you hear the gunshot? About 5:40. Bubsy and I both heard it. I couldn't leave the bar, but Bubsy didn't feel safe checking it on his own. This ain't the best neighborhood, so we called the cops. Defense witness, Mrs. Wade Poe. Wade first met Sonny and Bubsy at McGregor's bar. Normally, Wade would never associate with that type, but Wade is a novelist. He's writing a book about lowlifes and con artists and wanted it to sound authentic. That's why he befriended them, for research. Prosecution cross-examination. Are you aware that at 5:32 on the day of the murder, your husband went to the bank beside McGregor's bar and withdrew $10,000? That's what the police say. Do you know why he withdrew it? No. Do you know what happened to the money? No, I don't. Could it have been used to buy Bubsy Burkhoff's silence? Objection. Withdraw the question. Does your husband own a gun, Mrs. Poe? He used to own an old Colt 45. I don't know what happened to it, and Wade says it was stolen. Police chemist. Prosecution. Did you perform a nitric acid test on the defendant? Police chemist. Yes, it showed that he had recently fired a gun. Did you perform a test on anyone else? Yes, on the deceased, Bubsy Burkhoff, Mrs. Wade Poe, the bartender, and Mrs. Gabriel. The results? Minute traces of nitrate were found on the deceased's right hand and on his right trouser pocket. Nothing on the others. Defense cross-examination. Is it possible to pick up gunpowder traces if you simply handle a fired gun without actually firing it yourself? Yes, but can gunpowder nitrate be washed off? If you wash thoroughly, yes. And if the assailants were wearing gloves, then of course there would be no nitrate traces at all. Prosecution witness, forensic expert. You examined evidence for both scenes. Please summarize your findings. In Mr. Walker's living room, we used a phosphorescent scope and found no blood traces, nor was there any other evidence indicating a crime had taken place in the alley behind the bar. We found quite a bit of blood, all matching the deceased's. The splatter patterns indicated the body had not been moved and that this was the scene of the crime. Here is the report of the first officer to arrive at Mr. Walker's home. Please read the section out loud. Forensic expert reading. The room was stuffy, and when I first entered, it smelled a little. It smelled a little gunpowder. I smelled a little gunpowder. Do you still insist that there's no evidence of the murder having been committed there? Yes, the officer was undoubtedly mistaken. Autopsy report. Medical examiner reading. Mr. Walker was killed by a single shot entering the chest cavity just below the sternum. His assailant had to have been facing him approximately 8 feet away. The bullet was retrieved and from a .45 caliber handgun. Death occurred within seconds. Prosecution. Was there physical evidence more consistent with an act of self-defense or with cold-blooded murder? Impossible to tell. We certainly found nothing to indicate that Mr. Walker had been threatening his assailant. But I really can't draw any conclusions. Okay, so let's go on here. Cast the verdicts. Witless Eyewitness, that's W, so that's probably here. A witless eyewitness. Deliberations. You and other jury members combine the forensic evidence with the testimony of the two witnesses in the bar and agree with the defense. The alley was the scene of the crime and the time 5:40 p.m. Since there is no evidence indicating that Bubsy and the bartender are in collusion, you also conclude that both are innocent. Nonetheless, Bubsy's behavior seems noteworthy. He was in an unexpectedly good mood, and despite financial straits, he ordered an expensive scotch. Several jurors want to connect this to the defendant's withdrawal of $10,000 from this bank. The large amount of nitrate on Wade's hands proved that he had fired a weapon, while the trace of nitrate on the deceased's hands and in his pocket indicates that he had held a fired gun, perhaps carrying it in his pocket the distance of 8 feet between the gun and the victim. goes against the theory of self-defense. Despite all this, Alice Gabriel's testimony is hard to dismiss. The gunpowder smell mentioned by the police supports her story. She also seems to have no reason to lie. Perhaps she simply misinterpreted what she saw. Now let's go with the verdicts here. Here we are. You and fellow jurors argue endlessly, trying to reconcile Alice Gabriel's story with the rest of the evidence. After 3 days of deliberation, you finally deliver your verdict, finding Wade Poe guilty of first-degree murder. The key to the case was a passing comment by Wade's wife. Okay. Stating that he had been doing research on lowlifes and con artists. The mystery you discover hinges on an old con game played by Sonny and Bubsy on the naive defendant. The fight and murder, quote-unquote, that Alice witnessed from her window had actually been staged for Wade's benefit. Sonny loaded the silver .22 with blanks, which forced Wade to kill him in self-defense. When Bubsy walked into the apartment a few seconds later, Wade was desperate, prepared to do anything to avoid a murder charge. Bubsy said that he would keep his mouth shut and dispose of Sonny's body on a payment of $10,000. Wade had no choice but to agree. Wade rushed to his bank and quickly delivered the money to Bubsy, while Bubsy was celebrating with a drink at McGregor's. His partner Sonny was busy disposing of the evidence, but the two con artists had seriously underestimated their pigeon. Excuse me. After paying off Bubsy, the writer began to have second thoughts. Had he been the victim? Had he been the victim of a con, like the cons Sonny and Bubsy always bragged about? Enraged by the thought, Wade retrieved his gun from the glove compartment and hid himself outside the house. When Sonny emerged, still very much alive, Wade followed him to McGregor's bar. There in the alley, he confronted his tormentor and shot him to death. This time for real. That's interesting. This has been a reading from Whodunit, You Decide, Many Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.